I was like, I'm out. I even said, I was like, you know what? This is so uncomfortable. I'm 99% sure I'm about to make some statements that I'm going to regret. So I need to walk away. But the ability to then, like, it's like pushing through a toddler tantrum, man. You just got to like push through that emotional discomfort, because these uncomfortable conversations, in my experience, are all because of I want to avoid this visceral reaction. With TikTok, I've noticed that I'm only getting things I care about, and it like knows if I swipe past something really quickly, right? It's learning she doesn't care about this, and
Yeah, TikTok
uh
algorithm is so good.
it is so good cuz like I will get things, and there are people that are like testing the algorithm, and they'll say, "Okay, you are probably a mother of two small children, two or more small children. You
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
probably like going to Target." Like they will literally
Mm-mm.
say all the things about me, and I'm like, that is
That's kind of
scary.
scary, actually.
Yeah. Um, yes, that is kind of scary, but I actually appreciate it because it's doing some of the filtering for me. So I don't have to
Yeah.
sit
So,
through a
what's
bunch
your
of
thought
stuff
on
I don't
that?
want.
Privacy versus because it's that is the spectrum, right? So,
Right.
on one end, you have complete privacy, meaning nobody knows anything about you,
Right.
and on the other hand, it's free for all. Everybody knows everything about you, and here what you get is complete convenience, and here you have zero convenience, right?
Yeah. I think that's a good question. I'm okay with it. Like I get to choose what information I put out in the world about myself. Like I get to choose what I post about, what I'm like sharing, but I don't find it an inconvenience or like feel
But there are
um
some data that you're not sharing, like for example, like the TikTok algorithm.
right, but I don't mind that Amazon is telling me what I might like, cuz I'm like I actually might like it. I'm good with that. I like that people are like I like that I'm getting that information.
Right.
I like that I am it's making my life easier.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll give you an example that just happened last week. I was with a girlfriend, and we both are in our mid 30s. We were just together talking about Botox and
Okay.
about like as we're like,
Everybody's
"Oh, should
talking
we ever
about
do these
Botox on
things?"
TikTok.
Well, I was like, we were just like literally we were just talking about it as we were walking our kids in our strollers, and she was like, "Have you ever thought about getting Botox?" Like I like we were just having random talk. And literally I get home, and that night or at some point in the day I'm scrolling through Instagram. I've got two plastic surgeons that have started following me, and I'm now getting ads for all kinds of plastic surgery, Botox stuff. And it wasn't like I searched for it. It wasn't like I had like put that information. It's like it is obviously they're listening
I'm trying to
to
think
the
like how they could
words.
have done it. No, like I, okay, they're definitely listening to the words.
They're
Because
listening, right? My phone is
I mean, like,
listening.
okay, I don't know who they is, but your phone is listening because
Hmm.
that's the only way Siri can work,
Yeah,
or that's the only way
exactly.
like
It's
Amazon, like
always listening.
yeah, like Alexa, all those things. It can only work. It can because it's voice activated, so it
Right.
has to be listening all the time for it to work. So
Yeah.
that's definitely true. But are they really using that data? That I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I think it's really
But
interesting
I
how
actually
things
think
will pop up.
I think it's coincidence. Not coincidence, but I think there is a logical explanation behind it. Usually, it's
Yeah.
just not the one we think.
Yeah.
Because like sometimes like that's happened to me before, but it turned out that somebody also sent me a link that was like that, or like
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
was like a
Yeah.
different reason why, but it's like the whole like I think 11/11 thing,
Mm-hmm.
like because I see 420 everywhere, like like it's because like you put meaning to it. That's why you see it all. Like that's I think that's like the whole spirit animal thing. I think it's like that too. The
Yeah.
when you buy a car, like when I bought a Mini
Yes.
Cooper, all of a sudden I started seeing Mini Cooper everywhere.
Yes. That's
Like,
exact example I was going to give. It's like once you become aware of it, you're like not hyper
yeah,
focused, but you see it more.
you're aware of it. Yeah.
You're aware of it.
Before you
Yeah.
weren't even aware of it. Yeah.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
so that's what's happening. But going back to the privacy, because like you're actually one of the rare people who says, "Oh, like, take my
I
privacy
know.
away."
I
Because
know.
I'm like that too. I'm probably actually more extreme than you. Because I
Yeah.
feel like okay, like because this is how I feel, right? I think the people who want more privacy are the one who have more skeletons in the closet. Do you know what I mean?
Potentially. Yeah, you know what? I think about that post there was a post that you had the other
Hmm.
day. No idea what it was, but you're talking about a woman who had gotten up to talk and
Oh
she
yeah,
talked for
yeah,
like 15
yeah,
minutes about like what
yeah.
a terrible mom she was, what a terrible wife, whatever. And then somehow, 15 minutes later, the facilitator says something. She gets up and says, I'm cheating on my husband.
Yeah.
Like how, I don't know, that just made me think of that post where if
Yeah,
there are things that we're
like
hiding, privacy.
like for example, that's a trusted, like obviously there's some sort of a circle of trust in that room, right? Like what gets said in this room stays in this room.
Right.
But yeah, but let's say that privacy was broken, and somehow that
Yeah.
leaked out. Um, yeah, that's a that's a tough question, right?
I just don't think our privacy is guaranteed. Like with the world we
Because
live in.
that privacy is definitely not guaranteed because I was there and we were actually there to record video. So I have that on tape.
Right, right. And you get to decide how you use it, right? So you're kind of like Amazon. You got the data and now you get to
Yeah.
decide how you're going to use it. And so I think when you think about it, there are ways to use it against people.
Hmm.
There's a way to use that maliciously, and there are positive ways to use it too. So I don't know. I think
You
that,
think every job has that kind of, you think every job in the world, people make those kind of decisions, whether like it's not like it's part of the job, but is it moral or not, right? Like, for example, when I worked at Cablevision, I had access to everyone's emails because I worked in
hmm
IT. So obviously, I have certain like Cablevision is putting certain amount of trust in me, right?
right.
So I have certain obligation to, So do you think every job has that kind of, like, because people will just say, "Oh, I was just doing my job," right?
Oh, no, I 100. I mean, that's why we have whistleblowers, right?
Yeah.
I like, I watched two documentaries that this makes me think of, the one about Boeing and all the
Uh-huh.
plane crashes that they had, and the one on 3 Mile Island, which was like a nuclear plant that had a, a, a leak, or I'm not going to use
Okay.
the right words, but they had an issue, right?
Okay.
In both of those instances, there there are people there that are being told to just do their job, right? Think about Theranos. Like, yeah, I'm just doing my job, but
Yeah, that's true.
at some point, you have to say, wait a second. And those people are actually very few that, and then they get ridiculed and like they're fearful because they stood up
Well,
and
to
said, you know what? I don't think this is
yeah,
right.
but I bet you that the Theranos case, I bet you the vast majority of them actually had no idea. Like they couldn't even have known. There was probably like a certain, like the scientists and people
Yes.
like that probably kind of could have asked the questions, but maybe they didn't.
Yes. But they didn't, right? But
Yeah.
I think that like we all have this gut instinct. Like I
But
don't
there's
know. And
three
maybe
groups. There's the group that is completely oblivious to the fact of what's going on, and they're not even
right.
like questioning anything. And then there's the
Yeah.
group that might suspect something, but don't actually question anything. and then there's the group that actually questions and like very small group actually questions and try like have the courage to like stand up and speak up, right?
But yes, I agree with you. But like Elizabeth Holmes, like at what point, like how do you get so lost in your
Oh, but she's
message?
like a narcissist, no?
No, she is definitely something that
Yeah.
is not normal.
Or like a
Um,
sociopath or something.
yeah,
I mean, she's
I
definitely.
would.
I mean, I think every CEO is a sociopath, right? I think.
No,
No,
I don't think so.
I think they are not a psychopath, a sociopath.
Okay,
Like I
what's the
think you kind of
difference?
have to be. I think you have to be a sociopath to be able to remove your emotions from making a decision where it's gonna affect, let's say, a life of 1,000 people in order to save 1 million people, right? Like you kind of have to be a sociopath to be able to.
So Michael
No,
Brodiway is a sociopath.
no, I'm pretty sure that. Like I think I fall in the scale of sociopath too.
Maybe
I
there's
think.
degrees of it. Maybe
Yeah,
it's
yeah, 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 yeah.
like
Of course.
autism.
Yeah,
There's a spectrum,
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Everything is.
but there's a spectrum. But yeah, like I think it can go so like to our initial point, like I think you can go so bad when you have information and data and whether that is the data that I want to go get Botox or whether that's the data that you know as a CEO that you're doing something wrong. Like
Yeah,
there is a
yeah,
moral like there is moral like when you have information there is some kind of moral obligation like whether it's big small
yeah,
whatever whether it's you having the emails right like
yeah. I mean, for me, like, I mean, that's a little different because, like, it's not like they asked me to do anything wrong, right? It's just that
yeah but you
I,
could have
like,
done something wrong
yeah, yeah, exactly,
like
yeah,
you could have done something wrong so because you have information because
Mhm.
you have data you
Like,
have
I could have probably seen if I was gonna get a raise or not, or you know what I mean?
yeah like okay I'm in like the I'm thinking about a lot of TV shows makes me feel like I like watch a lot of TV but I'm like in the first like 20 minutes of Ozark
Yeah,
and I've
I think I
just
saw
started
that. Yeah,
it. I'm way behind here, but I just started it, and like they're obviously working with like money launderers or whatever. They're already doing bad shit. Like these people are not good people, but even they have like this moral obligation, like knowing whether they're
yeah, yeah, yeah,
taking
yeah.
money, doing things like
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I think
We
that
talked about it.
everything
Remember
we did.
Sopranos? Yeah.
Oh
Remember
yeah,
you were talking about like Sopranos, like Tony Soprano is very authentic. That doesn't
yeah.
mean he has the right like moral judgment or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Man, you have a good memory, dude.
But I think you're right. Like, yes, well, I'm gonna take the conversation one step further. So there are certain things that's obviously wrong, right? So for example, if my
Correct.
boss is like, go see if like so and so is like emailing with like like that
Right.
would be wrong. It's kind of obvious for me that that's wrong, right? But then there are certain things that is that in Soprano case or Ozark cases, right? Like the morality is what's right and wrong is different for different people, right? Like what's
Correct.
happening with the whole abortion thing right now, right? Like for example, that's a thing that's split exactly 50-50 in the United States between people that think that abortion is wrong versus think that
Mhm.
abortion is right, right?
Mhm.
So there's no right answer there. So that in that kind
Right.
of case, so there's also that where yes, you can say I'm doing the morally right. Everybody could be doing morally the right thing. It's just that people have different judgment on what's right and wrong. Also,
Ex- yes, there's gray area.
yeah.
It's gray. It's really gray. Um
I don't know what my point was, but yeah,
I think that two things can be true at the same time. Like maybe like people like there is no we can't go to any like we can't go to any like being here on earth and be like, okay, tell us, shoot us straight, level with us. What is abortion right or is it wrong? Like there's
yeah.
no I mean, yes, the courts and states and all these people can make decisions, but
yeah.
there's no like true like definition.
Well, it
Like you
depends on
said,
their. I think it depends on how they grew up mostly. Like it's because I think a lot of people their values are based on how the
yeah,
environment they grew up, right? Like I'm sure I'm affected hugely by my parents and stuff like that.
right.
So yeah, so I
But
mean,
there's nothing saying like this is right, this is wrong. Like I'm trying to think
yeah,
of
yeah,
something
yeah.
that's more like cut and dry. Like, um,
And also, I think it's contextual, right? When you said the whole Ozark thing or Sopranos thing, right? Like Tony Soprano will do anything in his power to protect his family, right? Because
right.
that's what he values, and it's
Yes.
like to
Yeah.
him it's right, even if that meant killing somebody else, right?
Yeah. Right.
So I mean,
Right.
like,
Doing a lot of bad things.
yeah. So I mean, it's like it's contextual too. Like your morality, your values is also contextual. So that's why I can totally see people that are working at Theranos going, like justifying it,
Oh,
you know,
yeah. Yeah.
rather than like
Yeah.
deep inside knowing that they're doing something wrong.
Right. Well, I think even like just what I've read and what I've seen depicted is you can tell there's this internal struggle. Like, am I the like I've got to be the crazy one? There are, a thousand other people that are like, this is great. Then you've got the entire world
It's
saying
like a
like, this
cult.
is great.
It's like a cult.
Yeah.
That's how
That
cults work.
it's like, oh, okay, something, you start to get that gut feeling. But again, back to what you said, it's like what you know, right? If you grew up in Scientology and that's all you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
that's all you know, right?
Hmm.
Like you don't know that there's anything right or wrong or about what you're doing or what you're not doing. You just know what you know.
But I actually also think that it's a certain type of people that falls into a cult versus they leave the cult. So, like,
I think the first two groups that you talked about, I think so it goes back to those three groups that you talked about.
yeah.
The
Yeah, yeah,
completely
yeah, yeah, yeah.
oblivious, the
But I think
may
even within the oblivious, I think there's a fourth group, which is like they're beyond the oblivious. Like, and these are the people. Okay, here's my theory, right? So,
why do you think they're oblivious? Like why are they oblivious?
well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know like
You just
the science
they
behind it or
just
anything
are.
like that. Yeah.
They just are.
Here's what I think.
Yeah.
I think there's about 5 to 10% of the population who are easily fooled, right? So when you see those like email scams, like Prince of Saudi Arabia, or like when you see the guy selling an iPhone on the subway, like for
Right.
$50, like those kind of
Yeah.
things, like there are people who falls for that. There are about 5 to 10% of the population who falls for that, and I think that this is the fourth group. Okay, because
Okay.
like even if you're oblivious, most people that are oblivious still wouldn't fall for those type of things.
Okay, so
Do-
so the fourth group is like the $50 iPhone subway
Yeah,
group.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay.
And I
Okay,
think
what's
that 5 to 10% of the group are the ones that are the audience, the majority of the audience, like the Tony Robbins audience, like the ones that falls for this like, you know, like dream life, this type of thing. And that's why all those marketing tactics that they teach, right? About like using the time, like trying to like the FOMO tactics, right? The you know, like the price slash, like all of those tactics are designed to work on those people. That's why like we would be thinking like, oh, are you serious? Like the princess are you really gonna fall for that? But people fall for it, right? And I'm sure you see some marketing be like, are you serious? Like you really people really gonna fall for that? But there's that 5 to 10% of the population that do fall for it, and that's why it works. The
yeah.
problem is when you do that, you're killing your brand to the 90 to 95% of the audience who doesn't fall for that, right?
Mhm.
so you so you're basically all these businesses are basically surviving here. And once they run out of customers, they're done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're not really
Yeah.
building a real brand. Yeah.
I just thought of some documentary that I watched where this company was like a fake, it was like a fake marketing company. And it targeted vulnerable people, like the promise of like, we're going to build your website. Man, what was that? We're going to build your website. We're going
Wait,
to,
what is it called?
well, I can't remember what the name of it was. I'm sure someone will know, but like you, they would call these folks, or maybe it was like you went to a link and you like filled out your information saying, I'm interested in building a business. So
Okay.
one woman, for example, like made blankets or something like for babies,
Yeah.
and she was trying to build her business. She was this entrepreneurial spirit, right? And they're like, we are going to help you. We're going to build your website. We're going to give you all the course material. And ultimately, they would sign them up for thousands and thousands of dollars, but they weren't actually delivering anything
Anything?
at all. And so they would get them on these subscriptions, and they'd be like, okay, we need to buy
Was it
one more
someone famous?
course. Man, no, it wasn't like a name that you, if I said it, you would probably know, but they got in a lot of trouble. Because eventually like, and the workers would be told like, you have to call this person. We need to get another $5,000 from them. Or, whatever. And there are people that are either still in litigation, or whenever I watch this, they were still in litigation, or some had never recouped their money. It makes me want to look up what it was, but it was like literally just a scam, like going after, because within that group of oblivious people, I think there are just people that see the good in the world. Like they're these really good people that are. It's not even that they're oblivious. They don't suspect that someone would do that, right? Like they are very,
Yeah, but it's the
their
same thing. They're
filter on
naive.
life is, yeah.
I
I
mean, I
hate though
think,
that we have to walk around with like a lens of
but
cynicism.
I mean, it's
Which
what Jordan Peterson talks about, right? Like, I don't think being naive is a virtue. It's actually
no,
a sin.
no, I
Do you
mean
know what I
like
mean?
survival of the fittest, right? Like the
I mean,
coyote
like,
that's like
here's the
walking
thing, right?
around. Yeah,
Here's what I think. If
tell
I'm
me, son.
if I'm getting if somebody's beating the shit out of me in the middle of the street, right? Because they wanna steal my wallet because they're hungry and they need to eat, right? But let's say there's another guy next to him, a total stranger who's just watching this happen right in front of his eyes. I'll be more resentful at that guy than the guy trying to steal my wallet. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean,
Why did I say that? Why did I make that point? Well, there was a reason why I made that point.
we were talking about being naive and being a cynic. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah. No, let's say that guy didn't help me out because he was like, oh, I didn't know that, because because he was being naive or whatever it is, right? I just think that's yeah. It's kind of like when I watch those movies where somebody's like getting killed and there's an audience watching, and to that audience, like they're like, oh yeah, it's. I mean, like that's a bad example, but here's a good example. We all talk about how like child labor is wrong and all these like um all these like slave labor in third world countries is all wrong and all of that, while
yeah,
continuing to buy iPhones, right? That's naivety. Do you understand what I mean? Because
yeah,
the reason why that exists is because you're buying the iPhone, which is made in
yeah,
Foxconn or whatever uh in China, right? So that's not virtue. That naivety is not virtue. It's a sin. So
yeah,
yeah, you can be the oblivious person that's like, oh, I didn't know. What like is like I actually think ignorance is a sin. Like depends, right? Like ignorance out of just like voluntary ignorance, I think is a sin.
yeah. Have you seen the Tinder swindler?
Oh yeah. I mean, I saw like the first 30%.
What do you think about those people? What category do they fit in? Those women?
Oh, those women?
Yeah, that were swindled. Do you think they were completely oblivious?
No, I think that's completely his fault. Like those
Okay.
women had zero. But at the same time, I guess that's life, right? Because there are guys like that out there, and that guy like intentionally did that. But there are a lot of
Yeah,
guys out there who don't who takes advantage of women unintentionally too. Do you know what I mean? Like
that's true. That's true too. Yeah.
so like they'll like kind of like live off of them or like you
Mooch,
know
yeah.
yeah mooch off them.
Yeah.
So I guess I mean, but that guy took it way too far, right?
Oh my gosh. I mean, if look, if I had been dating Michael Brody and he told me that
Hmm.
his enemies were coming for him and I needed to send him $1,500 to book a flight, I would have
No,
a
that's what I
lot
mean.
more. I've got a lot of questions.
Uh,
Who are your enemies? Like I've beyond the $1,500. I I've got a lot of.
no,
We've
I
got a
don't think
lot of
so.
other
I think if
things.
you were in that situation,
You think I would do it?
yeah, I think most people would.
Because your enemy, yeah, I guess it is easy. It is so easy for me to judge hindsight, but and to have this perspective. But I just also though, I don't believe anything anyone says. So
No, but
that
there are certain people that you believe. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And that's kind of
Yeah, and
what
I guess
happened there, right? Like
if I loved him.
he like took his time to build a
That's true.
relationship with the person first. Like
Yeah.
he was smart like that. I mean, he would be a great
Terrible
marketer,
dude.
right? Because like
Well,
he knows how to
yeah.
nurture the audience
Yeah.
and like close them at the right time and like
And just keep closing. Like he just
yeah,
keeps closing.
yeah, upsell
Like they're
them.
buying, yeah, he's upselling everything. Like everything. But I did love the gal that like sold all of his Gucci clothes and all of his like she ended up just taking all of his closet to recoup some of her
Oh, really?
money.
Oh, that's
She
nice.
took like everything in
Well,
his
how did he get access?
closet.
How did she get access to it?
I can't remember. I think she was over there. I can't remember if she was over there or maybe she was saying she was going to send him clothes or something. She had kind of scammed him and was like, "I'll get all your clothes,
Oh,
I'll get
that's
all your
awesome.
stuff or something." I can't remember the details. Anyway, she got a hold of like a significant amount of stuff and was able to sell it on eBay and recoup some of her money back. And I think she's still selling things. Like she just had
Oh, that's
suitcases
awesome.
and suitcases of stuff. Yeah.
So she's the only one who kind of made it
Got
out.
some of her
Like,
money back.
yeah,
Yeah.
good for
Man,
her.
it just is. I know. I was like rooting her on. I was like, good for you, man.
I think he also went after specific people, right? Like specific type of
Oh,
people
yeah. Yeah.
that
Absolutely.
that are more likely to fall for it. Like, I guess that's what I mean. I guess so. You're right, right? In that sense, there are definitely people like that a lot of
Yeah.
marketers prey on.
Yeah. He knew his
So,
audience. He knew his audience. But,
I don't know. I
um,
don't really. I stopped watching Netflix documentaries because they're
oh,
not that
really?
good. I feel
Yeah.
like Netflix documentaries are so like I don't know, so
They
average.
have they have a tendency to really draw things out. I'm like, you know what? We could have done this in one episode. I'm not sure why we needed 10 episodes for this. But you know what? Like my brain, so I don't know if you have this or you know people like this, but I am someone who, and it actually frustrates Michael. Like I need to be, in order for me to listen like 100% to someone or something or to be able to think, I need like white noise of some sort. And I'm not talking about like a white noise machine. I'm talking about like I just need the TV on or like be listening to like a show and maybe not even taking in what it's saying 100%, but it has this ability of like quiet, making my brain quiet enough to be able to focus
Really?
on what the person is saying. Yeah. Or like, so when I'm talking to Michael, I need to be up like doing something. Like I need to be brushing my teeth or washing my face
As
or like putting dishes away in order to
are
be
you the
able
only one
to.
like that, or is there
Am I
other
the
people like
in the
that?
world? There've got
Yeah.
to be other people like that. Where like in school, like I had to be like writing something down and people like just doodling or whatever in order to listen to a lecture. And like what it did, it was like my brain like latches on to something
It
and it
needs
makes
like an
it
anchor.
quiet. And yeah, and then it's like I can focus. So Michael will be like, "You're unloading the dishwasher or folding clothes or whatever. You're not listening to me for like on the phone or FaceTiming." I'm like, "No, I am listening." And it helps me focus on what you are saying if I'm doing something. I think that's why yoga has been working so well for me versus like regular meditation
When you,
because I'm moving and focused on my body.
I mean, okay, I'm like that too. I mean, maybe I because but I don't. I hate it when the TV's on when I'm trying to talk, like when I'm trying to listen to someone.
Okay, not it's okay, so it's not so I don't listen to TV while I'm trying to talk. That was probably I need to listen to TV to be able to focus and think about something. So if the TV's on in the background, then I can actually focus and think and write
Yeah, okay.
or like
When you
work.
listen though,
When
like
I'm
when you're washing
listening,
the dishes.
I need to be like if I was probably in an ideal scenario, I'd be like folding clothes, walking around my house, like doing dishes, like doing something like sitting here writing in order to be completely
Yeah.
anchored. Like
No,
it like
that makes
it
complete sense.
shuts part of
Yeah.
my brain down. That then that part that like daydreams or like doesn't fully stay in tune is like focused on something else.
Oh, it's that okay, so it's that you're daydreaming, not that you're because like what a lot of people do is they're not actively listening. They're just focused
Right.
on so they catch words here and there, but they didn't fully catch the entire context. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, and so that will happen to me unless I'm like intentionally like doing something like sitting here doodling something or like writing my name and if you were talking particularly if it's like something I'm trying to like learn or be super active in listening, it's just easier for me to like do something mindless while I listen. And then the opposite, like if I am trying to actually be creative or write or think, I need something mindless kind of in the background that like will quite make my brain quiet. Because I could be
It
reading a
depends.
book and I start like I can be like reading and then come back to it a few seconds later and be like, wait, did I actually read that? Like I have no idea if
Yeah,
I
yeah,
read
yeah.
it or
No,
not.
I
Cause
read each page like 3 times.
yeah, that like I have to be like, oh, let me go back because I don't even know if I
Yeah,
actually read that.
yeah. But I was
Because
wondering if like I'm the only one or if other people are like that too.
I have that issue, like especially reading. Like reading is so hard for my brain to stay engaged, and it's gotten a lot worse as like audiobooks and things have become more prevalent. Like me sitting down and trying to read a book is so hard.
That's probably
Not
why you need
because
more meditation. Like the fact that
yeah,
meditation is so hard is probably the reason why you need more meditation.
at
And me too,
100%. And
probably.
it's gotten easier, right? Like I've been I've been doing yoga and some meditation for what like 3 or 4 months now and it's gotten a lot easier. And I think doing it first with like yoga or just being able to quiet like like come into my body and not be thinking about a bunch of different other things to numb out feelings has I mean been transformational just in how I'm present when I'm not doing it, which I know that's what everyone says, right? Like that's the whole point.
Yeah.
But But yeah, it that chatter does get has like I don't think I'll ever be able to make it go away 100%, but it definitely is not as loud and doesn't happen as often, or I'm not as uncomfortable when it's not happening.
It's hard when you're so when you're consuming information, there's two types, right? There's just information, like when you're reading a scientific book or something like that, a textbook or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. It's just all pure information. And then there's times when you're consuming where it's just all emotional information, where how this person is feeling. You're trying to gauge how this person is feeling or something, whether through tone of voice or facial expression and things like that. And I think those two are totally different in terms, like, for example, with this one, I'm like you. Like I can't, like if I'm just focused on it, like I can't. It won't just come to me, right?
Yeah.
But then with this type, I do have to be intentionally like very focused on listening, like, cause like when I watch somebody and when I, that's why like when I do a Zoom call, it's totally different than when I just do a voice call. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You're really good at listening, though. I remember that was one of the first things that we noticed about you and that Michael noticed about you when he talked to you. He was like, he's just
Oh really?
a really good listener. Yeah.
So you, if I, let's say I'm a good listener, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's say average was here, that means
Mm.
because what ends up happening to me is because I added my own videos. Every time I go back and I watch replays or I watch videos, I'm just like, oh, I totally didn't. I totally wasn't listening just there, because somebody will ask me a question, and I answer the question, but it wasn't like I could have answered it better if I was really paying attention to what she was saying. Like what if I was really, because when I watched rewatched it, I'm like, oh, I think actually she was trying to say this. Like she was actually trying. This is what she was really struggling with. So that answer probably didn't really help her. I have
Mm.
to answer her like this. But I didn't realize that until I rewatched it. I didn't realize it at that moment. I thought, you know what I mean? So I'm actually not, what I'm trying to say is, I'm actually not that great of a listener. But let's say me as a not that great of a listener, if I'm already considered good. Just imagine how bad everyone really is.
I knew that's where you were going. Um, I know. I well, hey, but also like hindsight's 2020. I mean, you have like a different perspective. You already knew kind of what she was asking. Like you're an intelligent dude, so like you're thinking about, oh, I could have answered it this way. I mean, you always come up with like a million different. Uh,
But that
there's,
but
I
there's
don't know,
definitely cases where I'm like, oh, I misunderstood that question. And
but
hearing it for the
you don't think
second
that
time,
happens? You don't
no,
think that
good.
happens
But
all the time?
you know why I think it happened those times? It usually
Why?
happens out of ego. It usually happens when I'm focused on my answer more than the question.
Uh,
Do you
yeah,
understand what I mean?
yeah. Like you think you kind of already understand what it is, so now you're
Yeah,
formulating the answer.
yeah.
Oh, I think that happens all the time.
Or like something happens to be, certain things happens to be on top of mind at that moment, which I think is important. So somehow, like when you're a hammer, everything seems like a nail. So I try
Yeah.
to like either tie it to that or something like that. So somehow I need to completely clear my mind and have zero agenda, nothing whatsoever, in order for me to actively listen.
That's true. Which made me think about a conversation I had with someone yesterday about how they came into a conversation. It was actually a very uncomfortable conversation. Um,
You gotta have those
and
uncomfortable.
it was very, very
You
uncomfortable.
gotta do
Okay.
uncomfortable work.
Do uncomfortable work. Plug right there. Um, and we find like we just the vibe was off, right? Like the vibe is there's this weird energy. And if we finally get to the end of it, and she's like, and I promise this point is related. She's like, yeah, you know what? I came into this conversation feeling defeated, feeling like I wasn't doing things the way that you thought I should be doing them. I I felt really heavy coming into this and felt bad. And I was like, wow, I had no idea. And I said, in my experience, when I come into a conversation with a certain lens on, right? Whether it's a negative one or like, oh, this person's out to get me lens, like everything they say, I am interpreting it through that lens. They could, but if I come into a conversation feeling good and confident and excited, whatever, like in a more positive emotional state, everything they said, I would have heard it and
Mm-hmm.
felt it and interpreted it differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that has so much of a role in how when we listen, right? Even when you have, because people are like, oh, text has no tonality. You don't know what people are actually saying, which is true. Email has no tone. I mean, it does have tone, but like there's so much of that that you're interpreting for yourself. But even in person, like this was an in person, face to face conversation, and tone was very clear, emotion was very clear, body language was very clear, yet the things I was saying were getting interpreted completely differently than how I meant them. And the place we got to was because of the state, the glasses, like the filter that she had on that
And
day.
that, I mean, what you said exactly is the exact thing that Michael was talking about when he says, like, like 95% of the time, what you think is not going to happen, right? Like, when you when you have that uncomfortable when you do have that uncomfortable talk, or when you confront that person, 95% of the time, it's just in your head you were thinking the worst case scenario, right? So I just
Right.
feel like so many people do that. Like they I forgot which YouTube video I saw this in, but it was showing Brie Larson, how, like, why everyone hates Brie Larson. And it was showing a video of, how like they have celebrities come on and they'll have like, is Brie Larson, and then like Google suggests shows you the rest or whatever, so they'll do that. What she was doing was like, every single suggestion that, like, does Brie Larson go to the gym? Is Brie Larson,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, blah, blah, blah. Every suggestion that came up, she was interpreting negatively. Like, she was like, "What? What does that mean? Like, that I need to lose weight? Like, like, you know
Right.
what I mean?" And it just made
Yeah.
her like so unlikable. Like,
Yeah.
but like,
Yeah.
it's because she was interpreting everything through that lens. Do you know what I
Through
mean?
that lens. Yes. When you
Even though
could
when
flip
I
it.
saw it,
Right.
when I saw the suggestions, like, it just seemed like it's fans curious about you,
Yeah.
but she interpreted it as all like negative comments.
Yes. And depending on what kind of energy you're carrying around that day, what set of glasses you have on, I feel like is a big
That's
factor
true.
in how you're interpreting things. Like, and just like in that conversation, we had gotten to this place where there were a lot of interactions that had happened even prior to that conversation that just spiraled, where it was like one thing was interpreted one way, which then built a story in her head, which then the next time something was said, built a story in her head. Then the next time is a story in her head. And so I, on the other side, I'm like, whoa, all of that makes sense when you say it that way. Like why you thought that. Like all that makes sense.
Also, it was kind of a. It's not just
But
like
that
the
is
way she heard it, but the way you said it too.
yeah, I was
Maybe.
like, oh, I could
Yeah.
but how you can flip it and make whatever story you want
But
in your head.
but I'm sure if
Even with
she heard your side, she'll be like, "Oh, that totally makes sense too."
so then I was like, okay, let's go back. Let's go back to all these instances because I totally see why how you
Yeah.
could feel that way because I and why it would come off that way and how you could build this story in your head and now this energy that you're bringing all makes sense. But let me tell you what I was thinking. I thought I was doing I thought I was eliciting like a positive
Uh,
message, and I thought that I was
uh,
actually relieving some burden without realizing what I was doing was perpetuating this negative cycle, which was not the intention at all. So I think that we, like, as much as we can, as uncomfortable as it is, man, that conversation was probably one of the most uncomfortable I've had in the last 3 years. I mean, it was like a very uncomfortable conversation. But the fact that, like, how powerful it is to get curious
uh.
and to just keep asking, like,
You
get
know what I
curious.
think?
Like, what?
I think you need to have some more uncomfortable conversations. If that was the most
Why?
uncomfortable conversation you had in 3 years.
No, I mean, it was really, I mean, it was very emotional. It was heated. There was,
But you don't
I
have
mean, not,
conversations
it
like that
wasn't,
with Michael. Or like,
no,
like,
okay, I don't count the ones with him
okay,
because, like,
okay.
we will have uncomfortable, we're so practiced in it, right? That
Uh, yeah, actually, yeah.
it doesn't become a thing.
Just because it's easy for you, it might be harder with somebody else. Like for
Yeah.
you, it might be easy to do it with Michael because you know that he's like that
That,
too. Uh,
right. And that's my husband. I've been with him
mhm,
for almost 8
mhm.
years. Like, there, you get into a rhythm, like, there becomes a level of intimacy in that relationship that you just kind of know if you're doing the work to communicate and know each other, I think.
But I just feel like that could be everywhere though. Like I think the problem is that, right? The fact that you don't feel maybe not as comfortable as Michael, but close to that comfort level with other people. I just think there's a huge problem there in society like that because then what happens is we start building walls around us. You know what I mean? Instead
Yeah.
of like having conversation, which is gonna 99% of the time resolve everything, we don't. And we just build walls
Well,
around each other.
dude, I 100% wanted to evacuate that conversation. I mean, there became a point, there's like I feel like those conversations are like a bell curve.
Mhm.
Like, there's this curve to them. They kind of go up to energy, 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 and there's this like peak moment.
Uh,
And in that peak moment of that conversation, I was like, I'm out. I even said, I was like, you know what? This is so uncomfortable. I'm 99% sure I'm about to make some statements that
mhm.
I'm going to regret. So I need to walk away. But the ability to then, like, it's like pushing through a toddler tantrum, man. You just got to, like, push through that emotional discomfort, because these uncomfortable conversations, in my experience, are all because of, I want to avoid this visceral reaction. I want to avoid that feel. Like, the discomfort isn't the actual saying the words. The discomfort for me is how I feel, like that pit, like that stomach tension, like my body's all tingly because
Like
I'm
before
like
you say it,
emotional. Yeah, or like they're saying something and it's like sparking like this visceral feeling, right? This visceral reaction inside. And I just, in my experience, like, just want to avoid that and not pop off, like pop off and say things that I regret. But my ability yesterday to just like sit in that for a second with the person and just sit in that discomfort and then get curious to better understand, like, why is this happening, and to start to ask questions that aren't attacks, right? But like are genuine, like, how
that's
did we
like
get
so.
here?
So there was a moment when you because that climax was probably not the climax. It became the climax because you had that moment. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
It would have kept going up, right? So
Yeah.
I think I think that climax, the moment that you're talking about, happens when you disappear your ego, and it can really happen just like that.
Yeah.
As soon as
Yes.
you're
But
aware of it. Yeah.
yes. Like, I could tell, right? I even gave voice to it, right? I said, I am about to lose it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm very upset.
You you
I was
were
like, I'm about to say something.
yeah, you were like referring to your ego as a third person.
Yes. Yes. I'm like, I want you to know that I need to pause this conversation.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted in that moment, I wanted to walk away and be like, dude, we'll talk about this later. Let's let it be awkward. I don't care, right? But instead, like having that awareness, seeing it, it's almost like the third eye concept. I get like I could see what was happening, and to be like, dude, okay, wait, let me just ask a couple of questions. Like I think I was just like, how did we get here? Like how did we get here? Like,
I mean, that
and
was
we
the real
both.
start of the conversation, probably, right? Because
It was.
you were just probably just beating around the bush, getting emotional all the way up until that point,
Right.
and then that's when the real conversation starts happening when you try to understand each other.
Right, because there was a lot of like logic taking place, and there was a lot of like trying to be just misinterpretation of facts. And the reason the misinterpretation of facts was happening is because there was this emotional layer that was unsaid. And she even said, she said, like, finally, when I got curious, and it's just coming to mind for me, is like, just to get curious, is she, and I was like, why is this happening? And she was just like, you know what? I think I came into this conversation with like a lot of negativity. Here's why. This is why I felt this way. And I think if I would have led with that, I mean, kudos to her too. It takes two to tango in these situations. She was able to say, I think that is why I'm I'm feeling this way. We finally got to like what the emotional driver was, because all the facts are what they are. They're binary. There's the facts are the facts, but what starts to really distort things are these emotional layers that get tangled up in it. And I think the emotion is the part that in everything that we've talked about today, that's what's so, I mean, that just blurs the lines.
That's why I
That's what
don't
makes
think
us human.
the right and wrong thing that we were talking about before, like what's right or
Mm-hmm.
wrong. The reason why I don't believe in right or wrong, like, because like people I think always try to define what's good or what's bad, what's right or what's
Mm-hmm.
wrong, right? But I don't believe in that, right? Because like just like you said, because at that moment she's thinking I'm right because of this, and she is wrong because of this, or this is right and this is wrong, right? She has her own truth, and you have your truth. So you're like, no,
Yeah.
this is right and this is wrong, and both of you guys are right. Do you understand what I mean?
Correct.
And that's the problem. That's why I think we need to disappear our ego. Once you disappear your ego, there's actually no such thing as right or wrong or good or bad. Like
Correct.
if we, like if I go outside and like got attacked by a lion, that's not a bad thing. That's just a thing that happened. A lion was hungry, saw me and ate me. Right? That's just a thing that happened.
Yeah.
In my eye, it was bad, but to that lion, it was good. Right? To him, it
Yeah.
was right.
Yeah. It in this, and maybe we can wrap on this, is
Uh,
like my yoga. I have a yoga therapist, and she said, I think I mentioned this to you a couple weeks ago. She said something to me that blew my mind. We were in a pose, and like she purposely puts me in poses for like a very long time to not elicit discomfort, but to allow like me to like really settle into a pose. And they're usually uncomfortable poses, ones I don't like. And she was like, okay, let's really focus on not judging, right? I want you to just tell me what you're experiencing. Son, I literally every answer, she was like, no, that's a judgment. That's a judgment. That's a judgment. That's a judgment. And it falls in that, she was like, those all fall in this good and bad, like good and bad type categories. And she was like, okay, like it just kind of was this epiphany for me that like just what you're saying is that we just constantly as humans, like if I say my hip flexor is tight, that that's actually a judgment, because there's this like connotation associated with like, oh, tight is bad or tight is good, depending on who's interpreting it, right? But because that's not an actual fact.
it's it. Here, I'm gonna say something that I've been thinking about that ties into this. Everyone always says, I don't have content. I don't have time to make content. That's the biggest rebuttal pushback I get.
Yeah.
Son, I don't have time to make post daily. I don't have time. So that's a judgment. You think it's
Hmm.
a fact, but it's a judgment. What the actual truth is that this is not important for me to make time. Making content is not important to make time. That's the truth. But when you say, "Oh, I don't have time," that's just like, "Oh, my hip flexor is too tight," or "Oh, I'm not strong enough." Those are all just
Hmm.
just judgments. Like,
Yeah.
is it really the truth, or are you saying that? Are you saying that to like armor yourself?
Yeah. Is it, yeah. It's what it, like, I think we just have to start thinking about things like, what is the actual fact? The fact is, that isn't a priority for me,
Yeah,
right? Doing the content, maybe.
yeah,
That's okay. There's like nothing wrong with that if
yeah,
that's
yeah.
not your priority. It's like working out. Like, I don't work, like, I'm not working out. Well, that's a fact. Not true for me. I am working out. But
You're the only
I
one
don't
who
know.
loves to work out.
I do. I'm not the only one. Dude, I do love it though. It is so fun. Um, oh my gosh. I don't know. I've really gotten into Peloton. But anyway, I think there's just this, like, how can we start looking at what we're saying kind of in the way that my therapist has said is like, and when I was in that pose. And I think that's just been a thing for me is like, is this a judgment about my current experience or is this like an actual fact? And how that will allow for just a completely different perspective, a different lens, a
Hmm.
lens that isn't so foggy with the judgment, good or
It
bad.
works with praise too. I think when you look at somebody who's like, "Oh wow, look what a nice house they have," or like, "Oh, look how pretty she
Right.
is." That's also, it's also judgment. I mean, it's also judgment.
It is judgment, right?
Yeah,
So how much of
you're
that are we
judging
walking around
yourself.
with?
In those cases, you're
Yeah,
judging
you
yourself.
are.
Yeah,
And comparing and
yeah.
all all of that. And I mean, how maybe not even like trying to fix it immediately, right? But just becoming aware of it in
I
and
think
of
that's how you
itself
fix it over
gives you
time.
extreme power. It is. It is. It totally is. And that gives
Because
you
even
so much
Eckhart Tolle
power.
talks about it, right? Like the way to fix that is by being present. Like, like dropping your ego and being present is pretty much the same thing. But the thing is,
Yeah.
what he says is that, but we come in a human form, right? we have a form.
Correct.
So because we have a form, we can never completely disappear our ego. We're gonna want to drink coffee. We're gonna want to do something fun. You know what I mean? So
Right. Like, don't judge yourself for like
yeah,
don't also judge yourself for being a human. Like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
that's just another level of judgment. But if you can just become aware of it, and for me, that's been really powerful. It's just becoming aware of it and how it has improved my experience as a human on this earth.
Sounds like you became
To
like a very spiritual in the last year or so.
Yeah, since January, I've really been focused like on. I was a relatively healthy individual who, in terms of spirituality and ability to navigate life on life's terms. But through the last almost 5 months, I have been challenged in ways I've never been challenged before, and that have required me to do some work and to like really look at my side of the street and what I can own, and in order to be a better mother and or be a mother, father, be a better wife, and just a friend, everything, and to enjoy myself. Man, I didn't really like myself, but I didn't know that.
See, like that's one thing that I never really. Maybe one day I'll get it, but because I don't think I've
Yeah,
ever, because that whole self-loathing, like people talk about self-loathing, that whole cycle.
yeah,
I don't think I've ever had a. I don't think I've ever hated myself. If anything, like I think the problem is like I love myself too much.
I don't know. I mean, you had like imposter syndrome, stuff like that, right? I know, like I've never hated myself, but I was my and still am, and it's the area I'm doing work. I am my own worst critic. Like there's this voice, right? There's this voice in my head of like, how do you get better? How do you be better? You can be better. Not that you're bad, but there's always better, and you can continue to optimize. You can be better, and that voice isn't just to me, right? That voice is going to come out to everybody because that's the lens that I've got on. But I think that's a whole episode.
Yeah, I was gonna say something about it and then I forgot. So let's end it here. I'm so
Cool.
glad we're back. Uh, Always nice talking to you.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
too. You
So
too.
what
It it's fun. It's always easy. I'm like, where did the time go, dude?
I know. Well, we'll chat next week. Bye, everyone.
Yeah. Bye.
Ciao.